and I am honored to be the Secretary of Compassionate South Carolina, and I would like to welcome you here and thank you so much for coming on such a beautiful day. And please be patient with me as I'm not well versed in public speaking at this point. But we're gathered together because we all have a common interest in getting the South Carolina Compassionate Care Act passed. And some of us are caregivers of patients, others are patients, and some of us are in a capacity where we want the bill passed for other reasons. Economic or other reasons, we're welcoming everyone that has an interest in getting the bills passed. We began as a grassroots organization, and we are a grassroots organization that is inclusive of people with a common interest, and we have the backing of Parker Poe lobbyists to help us, and we are making a presence throughout the community through educational seminars such as this that we plan to expand and have in different areas throughout the state, so people don't have to travel as far as some of you did today. So thank you for coming. We basically want to provide support to Tom Davis and the South Carolina Compassionate Care Act by having a united presence, but also an individual telling of our personal stories, because we all do have a personal interest. But we want to do it in a conservative way where we're not pointing fingers and getting into arguments with people. We're conservative and want to bring our educational point across. We don't want to shame them like has been done in the past. People have been put to shame for not supporting. We don't want to do that. We just want to provide educational resources to convince the legislators to vote yes on both the House bill and the Senate bill. We offer advice to individuals who want to tell their personal story as far as what would be a good approach, and I just feel very honored to be a part of this organization that is going to be the momentum behind and the face behind the South Carolina Compassionate Care Act. Thank you. I'd like to, we have a few wonderful speakers here today, and I'd like to begin by introducing Grant Reese, who is an ex-deputy sheriff in Darlington County, who arrested people for possession of marijuana, but now he's in a position where, well, he'll tell you the story, but now he feels strongly, as we do, that we should have the choice to be able to make decisions about what we put in our bodies. So, thank you, Grant.
Thank you. My name is Grant Reese, and I used to love it because I could make cocky poses like this up against my patrol car, and it didn't matter if I was on day shift or if I was on night shift. I knew that I could always go out and I could make a drug arrest, and that made good impressions. Really did. It's good money for the state with illegal drugs. The biggest thing I found was that usually if people were in the possession of a drug, it wasn't marijuana. It was usually pharmaceuticals, because they were readily available. You got better side effects as far as pleasurable side effects, and when they got them, they wanted to enjoy them. With the marijuana, they could grow it in their backyards. They really didn't have to carry it around a whole lot. I'm not going to say I did make arrests because of the marijuana, but usually it was because of pharmaceuticals. 4 years ago, fell off a ladder, and that's when we found out that I had a whole lot more damage to my spine than what I would ever thought. I always thought, oh, I have a backache, I pulled a muscle, oh, I probably shouldn't have fought so hard last night, and I should have used my taser. And then a year after that, I was diagnosed with epilepsy, which could have been a lot of problems when I thought I was fighting and losing, but I could have been having a seizure. The pain is something I've never experienced, never. I take 60 milligrams of morphine a day, 30 at night, 30 in the morning, time released, and that's supposed to be the answer, and it's not. I started off at the lowest dose because I was scared to death of taking pills, just scared to death. And realistically, that doesn't look like a lot. That's 560 M&Ms. That's how many pills I take in 1 month. 1 month, 560 pills. So, with that 560 pills going into my body that's not curing me, it's not slowing the elements down that are taking me away from my family, taking me away from just sitting there enjoying time by myself, which I can't do. I can't be left alone. And there's a lot of us are like that. And that's just me. And I consider myself lucky because there's a lot of children that will never grow up to enjoy if this bill doesn't get passed or get to the point to where it can go further than what it is, where we've got people saying negative things about an all-natural substance. Just like that right there. That's a jar of honey that can be bought in any store that comes from the earth, from the bees, from the flowers. I can go and buy this honey, and it might be from another country. It might be out of somebody's backyard, and they just slapped a label on it, and one of the big box stores picked it up. We're not wanting something like that. We're wanting something to get past where it's controlled, where it's regulated. We want doctors, we want scientists, we want studies to be done so that people like me can have the pain taken away without having to take a pharmaceutical that I don't know what they put in it. I get told, hey, do this. It'll be a whole lot better for you. But in the end, look on the internet, and then you start seeing all these, this will do this. This will take your memory. This will take your mind. My mind almost resets itself every day to where I have to look at my wife and say, did I tuck my son in, who's 12 years old, and at one time we used to chase each other around. There's been many times that we could sit down and build Legos, and we didn't have to use the instructions because my mind just magically built them in my head, and then I could put them together. This has got to pass. And when they say that they want to use South Carolina as a blueprint for other states so that they can go back and rebuild them, that sounds like a win-win situation to me. We can get relief. Other states can learn from our state because we've got great people that are working with this. Like Judy said, we started off as grassroots, and there's a lot of people that started this with just a hope and kind of a reaching out to help their children, to help themselves, to help their mothers, fathers, aunts, uncles. So we all need to get together, spread the word. We don't want this stuff growing in the backyard. We don't want this stuff coming from a street corner that, 5-mile radius. You can get marijuana, you can get weed. We don't want that. We want medical cannabis that's taken care of for us, that will take care of us. And then maybe I can get my brain back and my body back and have the ability to let my family get the pleasure of me being back. I can be a husband to my wife. I can be a son to my mom, a brother to my sister, a son to my dad. And that's what we need. And this is the way we need to do it. We need to stick together. Thank you very much for doing this. And there's a lot of people that y'all will see that are behind the scenes that, they kind of peek in, they do a lot, and they take time away from their families, their kids. The media, so far, all I've seen is mostly positive when it comes from us. They're not trying to change our stories. If you get a chance to talk to media, and you know, get a little bit of it written down and hand it to them. Say, do me a favor, tell my story. I want to be heard. If you want to interview me, that's fine. If you want to do it now, do it now. If you want to come to my house, come to my house. Come meet my whole family. Look at the pictures when I used to be that deputy, you know, when I was that guy. I'm not him anymore. That guy right there, at any time, could chase anybody down and catch them. Didn't matter how out of breath I was. They might have had to bring an ambulance to give me oxygen, but I could catch him. That wheelchair that I'm in usually, it doesn't go that fast. I get over about a mile and a half, the wheels vibrate, and I got to back out of it. I'll take enough medicine now. I don't need any more stuff. So I appreciate it greatly. And most of these people know how to get a hold of me. They're put all this together. I've got a great family that'll help anybody out, and any information that these people don't have that have put this organization together by their sweat and their tears and the time away from their family. They'll take the time and get you the information. They'll take the time to find out something. If somebody's saying this many of this and this and this, and it's not true, these people that are putting this together, they'll make it true. We want this bill to pass. We want these senators to be on our side. We don't want to have to fight the senators, because you're not going to win. If they're not on your side, we're not going to win. It's been over time and time again. You know, the Senate, the House, they got to be with us. We want this done right. So, my name's Brandon Reese, and that's my story. If y'all need me, find me. I'm a great guy. Love to talk. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Brant. I apologize, I got a little nervous and didn't tell you my story. So I'd like to share a little bit about why I'm here. I have a special needs daughter who was born with an extremely rare genetic disorder, and she has also a tethered spinal cord and has been diagnosed with autism. And she has uncontrollable outbursts of aggressive behavior that when we lived in Atlanta, she went to the Marcus Autism Center in the Severe Behavior Management Program, and we tried several options that didn't work. And she was prescribed risperidone, an antipsychotic medication that seemed to work very well, and she was on it for over 3 years. And all of a sudden, she started making jerking movements of her mouth and face. And I had no idea what it was. We had just moved to the Myrtle Beach area, and I was trying to get her in to see a neurologist to figure out what this was. And every doctor that I contacted, they either weren't accepting new patients or the waiting list was over 8 months long. So I began sending out videos of her doing this, just in hopes of getting an expedited appointment. And one of the doctor's offices called me back and said that these are side effects of the risperidone that could become permanent. To see your prescribing doctor immediately. Everybody says, see your prescribing doctor immediately. So I tracked her doctor down from the Marcus Autism Center, who had gone to open his own practice. And he left me a voicemail saying to try the medication for another 3 months. And I had reached the point where I was so frustrated and, of course, want the best for my daughter. And through a series of fortunate events, I was introduced to the CBD oil, which is legal for patients with debilitating conditions, and began to wean her off this medication with the help of the CBD oil. And that is what got us through, because no doctor would help me do it, even her primary care doctor. I'm trying to get them to help me wean her off this antipsychotic medication where she could have permanent side effects. So I'm very thankful that the CBD oil has helped, so she can function. But we're looking for the overall quality of life. and that's my story. I also suffer from migraines, and these migraines hit me at any time, and luckily the medication works, but we're only allowed 7 pills a month, so I have the challenge of having to deal with that. And my older daughter has extreme anxiety, so we feel that why should we be forced to put these poisons in our body when there is an alternative, a natural alternative available? And that's why I'm here personally, so thank you. I'd like to introduce to you Trent Chambers, PA, who is a local criminal attorney who can give us lots of information on lobbying. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Trent Chambers. The PA is actually my business. It's a professional association. So that's where that comes from. It's more affectionately known as the Chambers Law Firm. I started out as a prosecutor when I first got out of law school many years ago. I was a prosecutor for the state out in Conway, was an assistant solicitor. I did that for 2.5 years. I left the state work and opened up a private law practice, but you need a little help when you do that, so I went ahead and took a position with the city of Myrtle Beach, and I prosecuted for the city of Myrtle Beach for 5 years as a special prosecutor. So I had a black hat and a white hat, if you will, for a little while. I just couldn't take any cases on in my private practice that involved city officers or anything like that. And learned a lot from there, saw a lot of officers doing what they do out on the street, but was kind of able to help out a little bit in that somebody was prosecuted for simple possession of marijuana. I had the control of what to do with it. Had to answer to my bosses and things like that. So there are lots of programs in place now to keep things off of people's records for first-time offense and diversion programs, things like that. And that's about the only help I could give at that time. Then in my private practice as well, I do a lot of criminal defense work, and that leads all the way up. I generally like to start with a little joke. I tried to come up with one good here for this audience. I found two, and one of them's a little more appropriate, I believe. Did you hear the one about the kid that overdosed on marijuana? Yeah, neither did I.
Never seen it.
And you guys, please feel free to chime in at any time. If you open this booklet up, surprisingly, my outline that I made up is real close to this, so I don't want to overlap on anybody else's time, but it really is. And it's just a 101 for advocacy, really. And I started with 5 things that I think an organization can do, and I think you guys are doing that now. It's a model, and I think you are doing that, which is, if you look at the history of any advocacy, good or bad, you're looking at voting rights. There were advocates for that. You don't remember the name of the people that were advocating for it so much, but you remember the cause, and that's what you want. It's a simple, clear message. Forget about the agency that you're working for or working with, or because you're going to have a collaborative effort if you do that. Many different agencies, many different people coming in. Forget the branding of your company and just go with the message. So you want a clear and simple message. It works, good or bad, advocacy. Think of saccharin, it's bad. I think it's bad. But it took 7 years for the FDA to approve it, and that was done by lobbying and money, and it did happen. Not that it's a good thing, but it's out there, and it can happen. But for simple advocacy is a clear and simple message that resonates with your audience. Make it real simple. And I think the goals of this program are spelled out very clearly. That medical marijuana helps people, and that's what we want. We want it to be very conservative. Yes?
Can I just ask, what page are you on in there?
I am not on a page. I am not on a page yet. But if you'll go
You
to...
referenced it, I just wanted to make sure I had
Yeah.
Freestyle.
it. It's cool, I get it.
It's before
Lobbying for
the
medical
objections, yes, which would be,
Don't worry.
I kind of read over it and looked at it, but if it's not really a page number, it's lobbying for cannabis. And this, what I'm doing now doesn't really follow around with it. I'm gonna get into a more personal advocacy, which is really gonna follow this a little bit. But the 5 points that I'm gonna hit are the clear and simple message, passion and credibility. They want to hear from people that are affected, and that's part of where the passion comes from and the credibility comes from. Passion and evidence when it comes to credibility. So you can have someone who has all the passion in the world, if they don't have the knowledge and the evidence to back it up, their message isn't heard. The same thing with someone who has all the knowledge in the world and has no passion about what they're doing is not heard. You need both. And I think we have a lot of people in this room that have that. So and use that to your advantage. When it comes to research, there's a lot of stuff out there. When you look, you just get on somebody's computer when you're in their office and say, pull this up, go to PubMed. It's a publication website on medical articles. If you look up marijuana, there are over 25,000 articles that are published, peer-reviewed articles about marijuana. If you look up Adderall, there's like 9. So you can use that to your advantage too. Third one being bringing people that are affected, and we're doing that very well here. Not only should you bring people that are affected, but other individuals that want the same thing, because we're not just patients that want this. We are business people, bankers, lawyers, people that provide the equipment, security, technology, testing. All of those need to come together and lobby at the same time, not just one group of those. And it's, getting all of those people together would certainly help. Focus on the issues rather than the brand. I hit on that. Certainly want to do that. It's results-based advocacy, not trying to brand your particular organization. And number 5, work in coalition. Other organizations, individuals, doctors, lawyers, bankers, real estate agents, social organizations, anywhere that will let you in and talk just a little bit, a Rotary Club, whatever. Bring that into the mix and get these other people involved. Local governments as well, because if you look at the statute, if you read the statute, there's a lot of administrative stuff that's left open for the agency to do. And then you have local governments that are going to deal with some of these issues as well. Zoning issues. Where are dispensaries going to be allowed? Where's it going to be allowed to be grown? There are a whole sort of zoning issues that need to come into play, and we need the local level to be expecting that and supporting it. Yes, sir.
I know John Rhodes is a family friend, so I was thinking about, I read that earlier, where he should start, if he could put together a group and start thinking about that. So when we go next time, we actually have Myrtle Beach already figured out.
Talk to the zoning board and say, here's a model that they use. Maine's a real good example right now. They're going through that right now. I'm a member of NORML.
When you're dealing with mayors like that, the mayors have a very intimate connection with our state legislators.
Yes.
So if the mayor comes out and says, this will be good for my area, it's very important that if we can educate him, then he can educate, say, Luke Rankin. Because Rankin right now is on the fence, if anybody doesn't know that. So it would be nice to get him off that fence in our favor.
Exactly.
Since he is the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, which is, he has a very important position.
Sure.
So if we can put some pressure on Senator Rankin, that would be really positive pressure.
All right. Thank you.
Look at how Seaboard Street has been kind of revitalized by pushing to certain businesses over in that area.
Right. Exactly.
That was an area that was kind of, yeah.
And the big thing is to learn from these other people and collaborate with them to get the message across,
Really
really.
start thinking about it, so it's not
Exactly.
surprised when it's gonna do it. He's like,
Exactly.
oh, now it's gonna take another year for us to figure it out.
Because that's what's happening in a lot of other states, is it's passing, and then the infrastructure is not there
Yep.
to support it, and it's taking 2 years for things to come into play before anything's really available. And I think this statute really, if you read it, takes that into consideration too, which has, like Michigan did when it first went medical, is, you know, your recommendation from your doctor, your prescription is your card, kind of is what this thing says.
One of the things I've noticed, there's been a lot of law enforcement bashing. Cops don't want this. Cops have to do what they're told to do while they're in uniform.
Right.
If you want to know their side or how they feel, talk to them when they're out of uniform, out of their patrol car, away from that situation.
Yeah.
Because just like we saw at this last hearing, there was just as many law enforcement in uniform and out of uniform that were sitting
Well,
around.
what you're getting is the financial people there.
Exactly.
Because
Exactly.
of
We're gonna affect their budget.
our forfeiture laws in this state are the worst.
Yes, sir.
We get a D- when it comes to forfeiture laws,
That's
in that
exactly right.
someone gets caught with some marijuana or anything, and 70% of that money goes to the law enforcement agency that seizes it, and there's a hearing, and
That's right.
you've got a burden of proof that you really can't prove.
So, I mean, you know, they're humans too,
Right.
and they make up just as many, there's just as many of them as there is us. So instead of bashing them, try talking to them, try, you know, hey, what is it that bothers you besides just the fact that y'all could possibly lose that budget? You know, in Darlington County, they just got a brand new sheriff after a really, really bad sheriff. And he's got an open door policy, real great guy.
Mhm.
You know, he was with the highway patrol, now he's a sheriff, and he's looking for positive things in Darlington County. So if you live in that area, and, you know, set up an appointment, go by, talk to them.
And dealing with politicians too, you've got, you know, they're concerned if they back a certain issue that they're unelectable again.
Right.
So you've got to get them past that, and the way you do that is through personal advocacy, and that's what I'm going to go into next. And that's what's in the materials here as well. Make appointments, certainly do that locally, do it at the state level, do it at the federal
That's
level.
right, send them a positive letter.
And get used to talking to aides, because you're not going to get your senator, you're not going to get, you talk to the aides, make friends with the aides. They're your best friend. Then follow up with them, and thank them for their work, and send a letter to your legislator, thanking, you know, letting them know that that person's done a good job, and send them a copy of it as well. You're gonna get your message there. The aides are your friends there.
Catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar.
Yes, sir.
Be yourself, work in teams, get together if you can. If you're going in as a group, have different stories to tell than just doing the same thing over and over. Constituents of the legislatures are the best. If they're from their district and they're a vote, that's where you're spreading out in the state like we're doing now, is you want people from that voting pool to go to the people that they're voting for to say, this is what we want. And do it in Columbia, but also do it at home. You know, contact them locally, find out, you know, and go to their office. They'll set up time and talk to you. Stay on topic. Don't, you know, get off on a tangent unless I know your time limits with them. Because you may be in the middle of talking with an aide, and then the senator may pop in for just a second. Stop what you're doing and give him your sound bite, because he's just going to say hey and leave. So, you know, think about that when you're doing it, and then, you know, go ahead and tell the aide what you were doing. You know, that they appreciate that. And like I said, 10-second sound bites. If you can just get that out there, because that's really what you're going to get. At first, to get into the details. Know your legislature's records, how they voted, what their personal opinions are, and deal with that. But don't get argumentative with them. And that's what we were getting on earlier. Do not argue with them. Present them with facts. And if you don't know an answer to one of their questions, tell them you will get back with them right away. Go find the answer and give it to them. And you won't be able to do it in person, but, you know, just send them an email, send them a letter, something that says, I told you I'd get back to this, and this is what I have. relate the story to the issue. That's pretty simple with everybody that's here that has their own personal story. Those type of situations resonate very well with these legislatures, and if someone's back in their district that's suffering that needs the help, certainly they're going to listen to that. And then we were talking about opposition. You want to counter the opposition with facts, not arguments. Really, just what the facts are, and we're getting more and more studies done throughout other states that have, there's a lot out there now that wasn't there in the past. Normal, if you go to their website, Paul Armentaro he's got more information on the tip of his tongue about medical marijuana than anybody else I know. And I'm lucky enough to sit with him maybe twice a year when I go to these normal legal seminars and listen to what he has to say. And anything that you can get written by him, go out and find it. Yes.
Spell that?
I'll look it up and spell it for you. It's a difficult name for me. I'll give it to you before we leave. He's now the normal director. Used to be
Stu, right?
Yeah, used to be Keith Street.
Yeah.
He's getting up in age now, and
Yes,
he's
he
still in
is.
DC doing his thing.
When
But
referencing normal though, they are known for full legalization, and we're
Thank
getting
you
a lot
very
of
much.
pushback at the state house
right.
from bringing up their names. So
I'm just
those
more
were-
interested in the studies.
There are a lot of information. And I get it with the brand because they've really branded themselves, and that's what we're trying to get away
Over
from.
the next 3 months, and you'll be able to access all kinds of medical data.
Offer to be a resource for your senator or your councilman or legislator, whoever it may be. Just offer to be their resource. Look, if you need to know something, call me. I'll go look it up for you if I don't have the answer, and I'll give you the printout. Leave handouts, business cards, sign the guest book. That's how they're going to know you're there, and send you letters and reply to those. Follow up with a thank you letter, praise the staff, like I said, and send the staff member a copy of what you sent. Okay? Any questions, anything else we can do? Who we got next? Anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that a couple of things that you said really hit home, and I just wanted to let everybody know how easy it is to actually speak with. For instance, I live in Georgetown County. Senator Goldfinch, he had his cell phone number on his Facebook page. So we got in touch with him and use us as a resource to go with you. And what you said about having one person telling their personal stories. And
Is anybody going to be testifying coming up?
yes.
Okay. Check with others, know your time limits, how many copies of whatever you need. Be on time, sign in if you have to. The protocol is pretty, fairly important. You're addressing the chairman and then the other committee members. Give them your name and your district. Okay. Give them the sound bite first, then go into the details that are allotted by your time. Have a group plan so you're not repeating yourselves. Thank everyone in the chair and the members when you're finished. Have somebody take notes. Look at the senators and how they're reacting to what you're doing. Have somebody out that's their job, is to take the notes of what's going on and the questions that were asked, so that there's a record of it that we can look at. And answers the questions you know. If you don't know, refer to someone else or tell them you'll get back to them almost immediately. All right? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chambers. I would like to introduce David Newsom, who is our legislative liaison and our pro bono lobbyist.
All right, it seems as though we're probably going to do some of the same types of things right here real quick, but I'm just going to cover a few more things for you guys. In these booklets that you were handed out right here today is a lot of really great material. These things right here, actually, as I was reading through it, pretty much cover everything I would stand here and tell you, but what I will do is go through some things for you to kind of give you a better picture of how that will help you, especially when you're dealing with legislators. As far as public studies or information that's out there, quoted actually in this book on, and I'm trying to find the page, is and I'll find it as we're talking, but as I go through it, I'll let you know. So my name is David Newsom. I am the legislative liaison or governmental affairs, basically the lobbyist for Compassionate South Carolina, which is the advocacy group that is working on this particular issue at this time, which is the use or the legalization of medical cannabis in the state of South Carolina, which is the Compassionate Care Act. If anyone needs to know what that bill is, and the Senate side it's Bill 212. On the House side it is 3521, which is also in your packet. You can look those things up by going to the website statehouse.gov, and that is on the very first page of your book, right under legislators. It actually tells you where to look that up, and then how to find out what legislator you need to deal with and what district they're in, and as far as who your legislators are. And as Judy said earlier, it's actually quite easy to contact your legislators back at home to get appointments with them. It's a little more difficult in Columbia, and as Trent said, you will be talking to a lot of staffers, so you'll need to get used to that. And that's because they are in session Tuesday through Thursday, and they go home Thursday afternoon. They're usually all out of there by 1, and they're only there January through May. They get paid $10,000 a year to do this, guys, so believe me, they're doing it because they want to. And, well, mostly doing it because they want to. You know, so you do need to take that into consideration when you're dealing with them, whether you do or do not like their position, or whether you do or do not agree with how they're taking the position on your particular issue. Understand that they're there driving from wherever they're driving from for $10,000 a year, but most of them are doing very well outside of that anyway. But understand, they hear a lot of things. I mean, one particular representative could have 30 or 40 bills that he's dealing with that his name is on in that session alone. You know, so when you're getting in there, you need to make sure that when you're talking to them, you're going to get five minutes with them if you pull them off the floor. If you actually get an appointment in their office, you got maybe 15. So you have to have something together for a 5-minute speech, something together for a 10-minute speech. But what I would tell you is I would ask them where they stand on it before you start talking. Ask them how they feel about the issue. Tell them who you are, where you're from, and how they feel about the issue. They'll tell you in about 3 or 4 minutes exactly how they feel and where they stand. That's when you take what you have to say and address their specific concerns. That's when you tell your story. If you're a caregiver or a patient that can benefit from medical cannabis, then you tell your personal story. If you're an entrepreneur or a business person, an attorney, then that's when you tell them how you feel about the business aspect of it. Because what gets lost mostly, and I don't know how many people are here for business or here for as a patient's advocate side, the business side of this is going to be just as important as the advocacy side, because if we don't have a proper business structure set up for this, if we don't have a proper infrastructure of growers, processors, producers, marketing, dispensaries, no patient gets medicine. So regardless of having it for patients, we can't get it to them. So this needs to be, everyone needs to be talking to their legislators. If you're coming at it from a business point of view, find out what their business problems are with it, where they're looking at diversion and things going out the back door. Be a reputable person that's been in business before, so you can explain your business record to them, how long you've been in business in the state. If you're a patient, explain to them that these are some things that you need medical cannabis, because you don't want to move out of their district and take a vote away from them so you can be a medical refugee in one of the 28 other states that have this. Over half the country currently have medical cannabis laws already in place. The benefit for us is that we're looking at being 29, and the wonderful, to the 28th state, the 29th law passed. But we get the benefit of seeing all the other states and what they've done wrong and what they've done right. And if you get a chance to read this legislation, you can see how comprehensive this is and what we're actually doing. Because the most common argument you get from legislators is, what about Colorado? And I always tell them, we're not trying to be Colorado. Hell, Colorado doesn't even want to be Colorado right now. So they're working backwards. And the crazy part about it is, like California 20-something years ago was the first one to ever pass a medicinal law. It took them forever to figure out how to do it right, because hell, they were the first one. And then Colorado goes full wreck, and I mean, they didn't get it all right the first time around. but they're working now to recreate regulations and redo laws, and they're getting better. But that's the things we can learn from. We can learn from other states with medical programs. So we're so far away from trying to beat Colorado, it's crazy. And that's what we need them to understand. At this moment, we are working on medical cannabis only. Don't even bring up recreational, because that's not an argument for right now. Even if your view is that you want recreational, that is not your argument right now, because that's the one thing that takes politicians out of this argument faster than anything, is if you are also advocating for recreational at the same time you're advocating for medical. They will run away from this issue so fast they can't even stand it. So we have to be careful in how we talk to them. And then, you know, if you can get a meeting with them at home, you get a lot more time. But be careful about how you tell your story. Make sure that you're talking, that you stay on point, that you give them a very targeted story, and also include facts from data that can show how medical cannabis can help in your particular situation. So if you have Parkinson's, you can show them the video of the man who took medical cannabis during Parkinson's shake. If you have not seen that video, go online and look for it on Facebook and everything. It's an amazing video. So try to find data that's specific to your medical condition if you're going to be talking about that, so you can show how it supports. You also want to make sure you bring printed material. This book is a great reference point. Don't leave it with your legislator. Keep carrying it around with you. But feel free to make copies out of this book if you want to leave one-page things behind that will help in your particular argument. All right, and then, yeah, and always follow up with your legislators. You know, send them an email, put a phone call in with the staffer, get to know the staffers by name, especially for your senator. Whenever you're in Columbia, make it a point to go by that office and just stick your head in and say, hey, to the staffer who's always with them. Now, representatives, they have staffers 3 days a week. Senators, they're there 5 days a week. So even if you're in town on a Monday or Friday when the senator's not in, stop by and see that staffer. Like Senator Davis, Rebecca is his staffer that sits up front. She literally keeps his whole life in order. So when you talk to those people, you can slide by, and if you get to know that staffer and they get to know you and you're from their district, if you hand them a piece of material that you want your senator or representative to look at, they'll make sure that they actually hand it to them, rather than just being somebody who walks by and hands them a stack of paperwork and they just go, oh, Senator, this got dropped off. And they don't ever see that. So make personal relationships as well as you can when you're there. And also, I'm at the State House, and I think it's on, it's on the page that's meetings and follow-ups at the bottom. My email address is right there, so if you have meetings with legislators in Columbia and you're there, email me, and I will be happy to attend every meeting with you and sit down and let you tell your story or what you're there for. As long as all I have to do is you email me your phone number, I will call you, or I'll email you back mine, you call me, and I will talk to you about your personal story, about what you're going to do there. So if you're going to go there on behalf of businesses, or you're going there on behalf of patients, or your own, I will talk to you about that. That way, my responses to that legislator will be tailored to your specific story, your specific event, why we're there. Because I don't want to go in with a business person and start talking about patients' rights. That's not really going to help anything. So if you're going in as an entrepreneur, let me know, and we'll go in and we'll have all the business facts, the economic stuff, impact from businesses putting taxes back into the area, labor force, and all those different kinds of things that legislators look for, especially economic growth. Legislators love economic growth, and the one thing we haven't talked about enough with this particular issue is economic growth and what we can do.
New tobacco, man.
Right?
I just have a quick question, and I totally agree with you about economic growth. I'm fully on board with that. My question is, on a few pages in on this, it says, the objection, you're talking about medical marijuana legislation is FDA approval, and you're asking for some personal stories, and I'm worried more so about the incrimination factor in that. Some people, although they have had family or friends pass away that have benefited from this are still an ongoing struggle. So my question is, how do you do that without implicating yourself and bringing more attention on yourself?
Okay. Well, that's a great question. Because of our federal legislation and because medical cannabis is not currently legal in the state of South Carolina, it would be very difficult to walk into a legislator's office and say, hey, by the way, I'm still alive because I'm smoking cannabis every day.
Thanks.
So, what we do is we talk to them.
Some of us aren't ashamed though either.
Right, and everything.
I don't disagree on that by any stretch.
I will say that
there should be no shame.
I will say that everything you say to a legislator, lawmaker, or law enforcement person is based on your personal opinion of how you feel about the next few moments that are about to transpire. So
it cannot be held against you in a court of law.
So
per se.
that is not and that is not true
Go ahead,
either.
don't legit.
What I'm saying is I'm not an attorney and cannot advise you on what you should and should not say. I can tell you what would be advisable is if we are in a legislator's office, 68% of this country currently live in an area right now where they have access to medical cannabis.
Correct.
68%.
Correct.
So it's not unlikely that you have been to many other states or in many other situations, maybe in or out of this state, that you have or have a family member that have benefited from medical cannabis, and that's how you know why you need this.
That's right.
Would be a more strategic way to word that.
I totally agree with you. However,
But wouldn't they appreciate the
those facts
honesty?
are easily verifiable, and you are bringing attention on yourself, especially if you have children under the age of 18.
Right. I will tell you that legislators in a 5 to 15-minute meeting are not fact-checking or verifying whether or not you are or are not currently using in this state. And if you're not going to readily divulge the information, they're not going to chase you down for it because they don't want to incriminate their own constituents. And most of the time, if you have a personal story that relates to pain and suffering of a child or yourself, if you tried to tell them, they would probably be more like, hey, if you could just keep that down. I mean, I get it, but, not in the office, So telling them that you know for a fact that this can be beneficial, whether in this state or not, you can just simply say, I know for a fact this can be medically beneficial. I'm asking you to pass this law so I don't have to either, one, continue to be illegal, or two, have to be a medical refugee, which means moving to another state that has medical cannabis. And those are just some suggestions on how you answer that, but how you particularly answer that is a case by case. You choose how the next few moments of your life
I
go
don't mean to put you
on that one. No, I get it all the time.
I just think that
My job is on the spot, don't worry about it, we're
speaking
fine.
in third person
Yeah.
takes away from the personal part of them.
Yes,
You
and
understand what I'm saying?
you can make it personal without including your exact position in the state during the time of use.
Usually what we say on that is, don't ever incriminate yourself.
Absolutely.
I mean, you don't have to say that you're using it, you can literally just say, I know that this benefits me, or I feel like it can definitely benefit me.
Coming from a science background,
Yeah.
if somebody came and said that to me, I'm gonna be like, well, how do you know that?
We would never
Like,
encourage.
I just like to think a few steps ahead.
Right, absolutely.
And I think that's how politicians are.
Well,
We knew that we had people
sometimes.
that said that they wanted to testify in subcommittee,
Sometimes.
that they are currently treating with it. I can most recently say a stage 4 brain cancer survivor that's been treated for the last 5 years successfully, and we discourage that, because at that point you're putting yourself at risk. And we don't want
Absolutely.
anybody with
Well, you
a-
wanna talk about bad optics if they went after them.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah,
You
well,
know, at the end of the
that
day,
would only help our
prosecutors
case, though.
don't wanna prosecute medical patients.
I
They don't,
right.
that's
Yeah.
the last thing they wanna have to do.
Go ahead.
David, first, let me say, I heard him say a pro bono, so first I want to say thank you for
Yeah.
taking your time to
Yeah.
do it.
Absolutely.
You do,
It's a great cause, so believe me, it's my
so
pleasure.
first I want to say thank you.
Absolutely.
And, the next question
Simmer down,
I'd like
guys.
to ask, seeing as how you're the lobbyist for this group, could you, give us any information concerning why the first original law that was passed, I think I'm just quoting off the top of my head, I think it was 1980. Was it due to the lack of structure in DCAC, or was it due to the lettering of the law that if it was still a Schedule 1?
You're
It's
You're referring,
He's talking about, okay, so Julian's Law.
oh, you're talking,
No, not
okay,
Julian's Law. So what they did is they took Julian's Law and they
Right.
amended the first legislation in 1988.
right,
What the 1988 legislation said was that DHEC would literally have to grow and establish themselves a program to dispense medical marijuana. And there's several states that had that on the books since 1980. Not one of them had a DHEC facility because of different funding issues for one, and that it's still a Schedule I drug. So in that bill, basically what it was saying is if the FDA approved it, then we're gonna allow you to go ahead and implement a program that you could dispense it to certain people. Well, nobody there was several states that had that bill on their books for years and years, not one of them enacted a program. So what happened was people had to go in and actually create a structure, which is what the Compassionate Care Act does. Create a structure that protects DHEC to be able to set up growth
should've just went after her.
factories and.
Well, just could have introduced myself and then rolled out.
So, and then the CBD legislation, actually, when they did the CBD legislation, I was not a part of it. When they did it, they revised that bill
In 2014.
in 2014.
Julian's Law gets brought up quite a bit as far as legislators are concerned. That only addresses CBD, but the problem is Julian's Law is very unworkable. It allows for the patients with doctor recommendations, but it only allows for basically epilepsy. And but the problem is it allows us to possess it with no way to obtain it. So everything is, so yeah, you can have it, but you just got no way to get it. And then any other people in that under Julian's Law that are covered under any other medical condition have to go through FDA clinical trials and everything else. There's a whole law about it, but the problem is that law is so unworkable, and I had to tell a legislator this the other day because he was under the impression that Julian's Law literally satisfied all the medical cannabis community and he would not have to revisit this issue. That's what he was told when he was voting for that law. That's how much legislators read the laws. So that's why lobbyists are extremely important, although some people feel very dirty when they talk to lobbyists because they think that they're all bad. And unfortunately, there are several. You and me had this conversation last night at her dinner table. I had to explain to her, listen, I'm not that guy though, but there are several who fight for all the wrong things. That's how Big Pharma got so big, and oil and everything else. Those are all those things. But at the same time, legislators don't typically read 40 to 200-page bills. They're told what they say. And he was told this. So what I told him was, if the FDA actually did the clinical trials and then approved all this, then why would a doctor need to issue recommendations and then send it to another clinical trial for the patient to qualify when it's already been qualified by the FDA? You wouldn't need it then. The doctor just writes a script and you go get it. So the law is completely asinine to begin with. So it's just unworkable. And that's what I explained to him, that we need this law. And that was his other concern following that was, okay, so how do I know you're telling me this is going to be good and it's going to be good? I said, Senator, you sit on the subcommittee that hears this. The bill's only 40 pages. If you wouldn't mind reading it, you'll know that, I mean, it's a short read. So, I mean, and I can bring you a summary and I'll read it with you if you want. I mean, it's comprehensive. And so he, I don't know if you like that part, but he was real good about it. But no, and he actually was very receptive. And then the next subcommittee hearing, he had very little to say against it and was very anxious to hear testimony. So I would say that, again, laws like that are the things that we need to watch out for.
Well, I was just wondering because I wondered why it was broke down, if it was because a lawsuit had been put forth through them to basically try to make them push it through or what. So I was wondering where the breakdown come through, why they never instituted as a program. I didn't know if it's
Because it was
because
still
of the
Schedule
It was, yeah, it was still, it was,
So they gave themselves an out. So they gave themselves an out when they passed.
they basically took no culpable responsibility,
A lot of
left it all to
the
go.
original implementation of medical bills were actually amending those old legislations to enact a program that is, grow, dispensing, manufacturing. So that's how some of these medical programs came about, was that they took those laws and then they implemented a structure that DHEC could work around. So they weren't held responsible, they could work around and actually get it to patients that need it. And so that's, but now, fast forward 20 years, now, a lot of legislation is they're just writing a comprehensive program for DHEC and passing that legislation, and that's what the Compassionate Care Act is.
I had a second part of that question. The second part was, the first 4 or 5 states per se, and I don't want to rattle them off the top of my head and everything, that enacted medical marijuana laws. Are you, or do you have somebody in those states compiling the, basically impacts of, revenue, taxes, criminal systems,
So-
the stats that back up that it would be a great thing for South Carolina?
Right. So several states and unfortunately there's no continuity as far as how states do and don't gather the data, or whether they do or don't. So there are several states out there that are putting together their data. I know New Hampshire just released a new study on how theirs are going. Colorado frequently releases. Arizona releases every month. California releases. I believe I saw a report on Connecticut. So again, you can look at a map of the 28 states that legalize it, and then you can actually just Google whether they are or not releasing data, and then just check their data. And I know that earlier he brought up Normal as a website, and again, when we're dealing with organizations like Normal, and another one is MPP, which is actually in this book. It tells you where to go and to their website, mpp.org, is an extremely fantastic tool for information, for studies, for information gathering, for education, for educating yourselves. But when you're speaking with legislators, do not reference groups like MPP or Normal, because those are groups that fight for complete legislation all over. Whether they're fighting, they'll fight for medical in states that only need medical. They'll fight for recreational in states that need recreational. They're a complete policy program, just like Normal and others. So you want to make sure you're not associating yourself with recreational use. And I say that only because I'm telling you what the legislators are telling me, and not because I agree with it. So if the fastest way to kill this point is to start with recreational stuff. If you start talking about it, they hate to hear it.
Americans for Safe Access is another good reference.
Yes,
page.
and Americans for Safe Access is another one. Absolutely, ASA. When we're talking about this bill and we're talking about its comprehension, 78% of South Carolinians want this. There's already been polls done. So legislators know. As a matter of fact, when I left Columbia, I'm there Monday through Friday every week from basically January through May. I should just rent an apartment there instead of coming back home for a day and a half. But I was just speaking with some legislators there, and we're talking about the chairman of the Committee on Medical Affairs, who's going to be hearing this bill on the Senate side, Harvey Peeler. 60 phone calls while I was there in 2 days. 67 phone calls came into his office. All 67 were asking him to vote for this. 0 said vote against. The chairman of the subcommittee, Senator Verdon, that's hearing this. 57 phone calls came into his office in 2 days. All for it. 0 against it. There's been hundreds of phone calls and emails come into these legislators' offices, and roughly 2% of the total amount coming in is against it. 2%. So we're doing pretty good in this. And so what I would tell you is find out who your legislator is. Write them an email. Call their office. I'm sure when you walk out of here, I know you have friends who support medical cannabis. I know you do. I know you do. I'm positive. 78% of South Carolina, I guarantee some of you know those people. So, put in your phone calls, put in your emails, and understand that in here is a very comprehensive breakdown, a good bill summary, and you're going to get the argument a lot of times that marijuana is a gateway drug, and that's actually false. Many studies show that cigarettes are actually, cigarettes and alcohol are the gateway drug. 75% of all heroin addicts that were polled said that prescription was their gateway drug into heroin use, and that's our largest. Well, I'll tell you what. According to studies, marijuana is as addictive as sex or chocolate. So
Preacher.
it's pretty addictive. I'm assuming. And some say just as much fun. But and that's the thing is a recent study found that 48% of patients with opioid use had a reduction in 3 months of medical marijuana treatment. And then we talk about states where we have an opioid epidemic, which is killing 46 Americans every single day. And the argument I get all the time is, you're just going to replace one drug with another. And the unfortunate thing about them is that they're uneducated when they say things like that. So I tell them, no sir, what I'm doing is, I'm taking something that's killing 46 Americans every single day. Killed 725 people alone in South Carolina in 2015. What I'm replacing it with is something that's never killed anyone in its entire biblical written history of 5,000 something years. There's never been a recorded overdose of any cannabis product ever. Now, I'm not saying that cannabis hasn't attributed to deaths and things like that, but usually never by itself. It's included with alcohol and several other drugs, especially when you start talking about accidents and fatalities, because everyone knows when you're high, you're driving 35 miles an hour. You can just back up and drive off.
The most dangerous thing with cannabis is getting caught with it.
Right, yeah, absolutely. And so what we've seen is there was a study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association in 2014 that found that opioid overdose deaths were reduced by 25% in states that had enacted a medical marijuana program. And if that program was enacted 5 or more years, it was 33%. So I also tell them, based on those statistics alone, Senator or Representative, we're not replacing one drug with another. We're actually just trying to save some lives here.
It's the Mexicans that are changing the drugs because they're not making as much off marijuana as they are fixing to on the poppy. Because the poppy, they're having a hard time getting marijuana across the border.
I will not comment as to the logistics of drug entry into our country.
Just come to
I will say that heroin is exclusively pulled out of Afghanistan at this point.
Yeah, but
Yes.
they're working on it. They're working on
Well,
it.
but it's again, we're building a wall apparently, so maybe that'll slow that down. We can get that thing done, but I'm not going to address again. I'm a lobbyist for this, and I'm not going to address the logistics of drug trafficking.
Right.
I just read last week that a new study has come out that says for severe back pain, the opioids are not as effective as everybody thought, and they're going back to therapy.
Correct. That study is actually referring to its ability to actually block certain pain receptors, and that our bodies have actually started to, I guess, change or adapt to the extreme opioid intake that people are taking in, and it's being unable to block those pain receptors. The one thing about cannabis is that it's an anti-inflammatory. It's not doesn't block your pain receptors. It's an anti-inflammatory. It actually helps the problem. It actually treats the problem rather than mask or cover it. So that's another benefit, especially with pain. You're also going to get chronic pain is not a real thing, or chronic pain is, not very verifiable. And that's, again, the largest part of our opioid addiction is through chronic pain. 100 million Americans suffer from chronic pain. It's billions worldwide. So when we start talking about that thing, but you have to understand that 75% of the world's pharmaceuticals are consumed by America alone. So when we start talking about chronic pain, and they say, well, what about that guy who's 22 years old, goes into the doctor, claims back pain, and gets a medical marijuana card? I'll say 2 things about that. One, I'll address how hard it is to actually get a medical marijuana card and for your own recreational use of cannabis. And 2, the current course of treatment for that same person who goes in and claims that he's got back pain just to get some sort of recreational treatment is something that's going to lead to a life of addiction and probably even death. So I'd rather not kill the guy just for wanting to use something recreationally. I'd rather just give him marijuana, to be honest. And the difficulty of getting medical cannabis, according to this bill, is that you first have to go down to your doctor. You have to get a certification or recommendation that says that you have a qualifying condition that's on this list. And this list is in here. You'll see the list that's in there of qualifying conditions. Once you get that, you got to get a passport photo. Then you got to go down to DHEC. And if you're a caregiver, you actually have to pass a SLED background check at your own expense. Then you take all those things down to DHEC. You hand them all that, you pay a non-refundable application fee, and you wait up to 25 days. 25 days. Up to 20. That's a long time to wait for a prescription. But that's what you do. And then,
Social Security disability.
it's similar.
That means you have to turn down.
Then if you do get approved, you take that card to a dispensary, and you pay 1.5 times more in a dispensary for what you'd be getting on the street. The one thing about it is you're getting a legal product, you're getting a very tested, organically grown and tested product because you're sticking something that's in your body, medicinally. So we're going to make sure that it doesn't have chemicals and pesticides and all kinds of other things that are being put on it on street, basically your ditch weed or street weed stuff. And that's what we would call that because that's not medicinal use. So when they talk about diversion and things going right out the back door, you'd be a very horrible business person and just hate money if you were going to go through all that process and then go into a medical dispensary and purchase cannabis, which is highly regulated and tracked, electronically tracked from seed to sell. You have to register at that dispensary, and once you do, you're allowed 2 ounces every 2 weeks. So you're going to take your 2 ounces, you're going to pay 1.5 times more than you would on the street, then you're going to go back out to the street and charge them and just lose half your money. And then have no medicine. So that bill accounts for a lot of diversion because that just makes diversion financially improbable and basically just stupid.
I'd like to say, when it comes to, like everybody, I think I'd like to express my disdain, love for politicians. And, I think, granted, a lot of them, it is an unappreciative job, but they are there to do a job for the people. If the polls are saying 78%, we know all the facts. The facts are in. Anybody who's studied the difference in this country between, or studied their history on allopathic and homeopathic, the marijuana industry and laws and when they were instituted in this country, the actual setup of the FDA, the AMA, and all these institutions, like we said, everybody knows the facts are in on these things. It's due time. And as much as I would love to write them postcards and send us some things, I'll leave that to the nicer people that's more, but I want to know when we're going to start holding these politicians' feet to the fire. And I know it's got to be done in a constructive manner, in a way that's going to be positive. But for people like myself, and for people who don't know, my name is Dwayne Curl. I lost my mother, had to watch her in 4 months get chemo and radiation and be on pills where she didn't even recognize her own son.
Right.
May 3rd of this past year, I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. They wanted to put a cord in me, they wanted to put a feeding tube in me, they wanted to give me chemo, they wanted to give me radiation, all within 2 weeks. I refused. I ain't been back to a doctor since. Just for the simple fact, because I knew something in me, and this conversations me and my mother had, I knew something didn't sit right. So that started me on my pursuit of trying to find out everything I could about cancer, and then the effects and how the ramifications of our laws and how it's become enacted. And I'm just saying that if it's 78%, we've got people that's head of SLED killed, acting as a lobbyist himself. In other words, I would like to see
all right, so the simple answer to your question about holding these politicians' feet to the fire is this. The simple answer is part of it is just exactly what you just said. Law enforcement in this state has been the biggest opposition. That when I speak with representatives from major organizations who do this for a living, who get laws passed in states, who this is what they do, and they're in every state that's had medical or recreational cannabis laws passed, this organization has been in every single one of them passing those laws. That's what they do. They have told me that basically in almost every state they've never seen law enforcement this hard against cannabis. Our legislators, several of them, their ear is held by law enforcement. So the simple answer is that's the reason why we have all this data and all these statistics and all these people. The only way to help them over this wall, because they get up to a wall and then they don't want to go over it, the only way that we can help it is to actually start putting, because they look at polls on paper, but they don't actually see the people. So now we need to start getting the business people and the letters and the phone calls flooding their office. We need to show them what that 78% looks like, so that they'll stop listening to the sheriffs. Now, the second part to your question, answer to your question is, go see your sheriff. Go see your sheriff. Tell your sheriff, because he's an elected official. SLED is not. SLED's appointed. Chief Keel can say whatever he wants. He can do whatever he wants, and he does. But your sheriffs are elected. Start getting your friends and your people.
Horry County's a little different because we have a sheriff's office and a county.
Right. Well, that's the thing, and I'll make that. I was going to make that distinction shortly, because our sheriff's department doesn't do anything, but a lot of it. Let me rephrase in case that got on. Strike that. Correction.
Thank you.
Horry County Sheriff's Department is largely responsible for mostly administrative and civil actions. Our county police are our day-to-day patrol and criminal units. You'll need to go see Horry County Sheriff's, because that sheriff's in with the Sheriff's Association. So you'll want to get his support, which should be pretty easy to get since he doesn't have to deal with this on a normal basis. But I will tell you, and if you're from another county, you're not in Horry County or whatever, which I don't know who is or isn't, but if you know people from other counties, tell them to go speak with their sheriff and express their support, that they want his support on this, because we need to start getting the sheriffs to start breaking a little bit and start showing a little more support so we can get legislators, because one of the common things for legislators who don't support this is, I'll do whatever my sheriff does.
Where's the sheriff's argument?
Oh man, I'll get into the sheriff's. That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what.
What people don't understand, the sheriff he's the law of the land. In his county,
Right.
he is the creme de la creme. He makes other people go away if he doesn't like them.
Yeah.
And
Well.
people just don't
So
understand that.
understand, the Sheriff's Association and SLED are two separate entities.
Correct.
We need to divide them. Right now, they're like this on this issue. They are hand in hand and they are not budgeting.
Well, and that's
We have got to start getting in between them and winning the Sheriff's Association.
and that's why I tell you to go see your sheriffs, not your county police or state law enforcement. You need to go see your sheriff. Because we need to move, because again, they are elected officials, so votes count. So we start moving them away from SLED, and we can start to work that.
Well, Keel answers directly to what, McMaster?
Currently, it's McMaster's. It was Haley. Nikki Haley is the one who appointed, and yes, he answers to McMaster's. Believe me, we are working to sit down with McMaster's. I work very closely, actually hand in hand, with the lobbying firm Parker Poe. And I don't know if you guys know who they are, but Parker Poe is probably the most influential lobbying and law firm in that state house. They are very well respected, and not to say that that's a matter of opinion, probably depending on who you ask. It's split between a couple groups, but we'll get the meetings that we need. And right now, we're in a big transition period with McMaster, so he's not really trying to do a whole lot. And I'm sure you guys probably just saw McMaster's come out against cannabis, but that's against full legalization. We have there has been conversations with him before. He is in support of medical, just not full legalization, but I don't know where that's actually going to stand. And those conversations I wasn't privy to. And so it's kind of a lot of hearsay. So our goal is to get down and sit down in front of Henry McMaster's ourselves and find out exactly where he's at and what his concerns are, and then see where we go from there. Because, again, Chief Keel is appointed by the governor, and he runs for re-election in 2 years. So either way, barring something drastic, we're going to be with Chief Keel for the foreseeable future. But the good thing about that is we know who we're dealing with. If he's not there tomorrow, we don't know who we're dealing with coming in. So at least we know who we're dealing with, and we know how to combat that.
Well, the reason why I said that is because I'd like to see them reined in, you know, whatever you have to do to touch base with his superior.
Larger numbers of advocates, larger numbers of business people, larger numbers of financial people who want to come in and financially, you know, stimulate the growth of the area, the economy. That word escaped me. And then advocates and patients. We need to take this 78% and show them what 78% looks like, because up till now, they haven't seen that. And they haven't had lobbyists. I mean, now we're all here. All of us, we have national organizations that are now involved with us that haven't been involved before. So I understand this fight's been on for 4 years, but I want you to understand that at this point, we're in a better point than we ever were. We have more politicians and legislators that are on board with us now than we ever have. We have more law enforcement, because I sit down with sheriffs and chief of police and stuff like that. And the one thing that I go in, I started going in there trying to win their support and pull on their heartstrings, which might be a good idea for your approach, but it wasn't mine. Because they told me, they just flat out would tell me almost every time, yeah, I'm so far from supporting that, it's crazy, I'm not going to do that. But I'm not naive. I mean, I know this is inevitable. And the one thing I tell them is, that's good. That's good that you're not naive and that you know this is inevitable. So now we can get on common terms, because frankly, I'm not there to win your support. I'm not here to get your support on this issue, because frankly, we don't need it. What I'm here to do is find out what your concerns are and what we can do to give you the tools and the training and the things you're going to need to enforce these laws once they're passed. They get really receptive to that, and they like that because I'm willing to work with them, even when they're in the losing side of a battle. See, the reason they're so crazy about it right now is because they understand their backs are against the wall, that we have more support than we've ever had, and they're really, really getting fired up because they know that it's coming. It's inevitable.
It's coming.
So we're moving very quickly to make that happen, but again, like I said, if you want to leave the letter writing to someone else, maybe leave it to her. Unless she's just as mad as you are, then maybe leave it to someone else. Call
Go
her
to the website.
Yeah.
Look at all the stories that are on there.
Absolutely.
Right here, go to this website, look at the pictures, and look at the
So
stories.
some of the things on the website too that we're getting ready to do on the Compassionate SC, there will, within the next 3 weeks, probably 2 weeks, all of the information that you guys are looking for, we have a resources tab on there. It will be able to be printed, so you have it. There's a medical section, there's a law enforcement section, there's gonna be a pamphlet section and one pager. So if you're meeting with the legislator, you can take that with you. There's also going to be all of the agencies that are currently supporting, that should be on there today. All of the agencies that have come out in support of medical cannabis and what their statements were. Plus a lot of research and study and links to any type of, under the medical tab, you'll find links to anything that you need to be able to find as far as what conditions that this treats, what studies have been out there to prove that it helps with these conditions and it helps treat them. Also on there, if you're not a letter writer, we will have a tab on there you can put in your area, and there'll be a blanket, there's 3 or 4 blanket letters.
Yeah,
That when you put your name in, it'll automatically go to your legislator.
There's an addition of a sample letter in that booklet that you guys got. And another thing, and then I'll close on this, and Brent brought up a really great point too. And I'll close on this. You guys can ask me any further questions you have. When you do get those meetings with your legislators, make sure that if you're a caregiver, you're taking your child with you, if possible. I understand that if you got to go to Columbia, sometimes it's not possible, but if possible. And no matter whether you're a business person or not, get somebody with you, take a picture of you and your legislator. Post it on Facebook, tell them you were talking to them about medical cannabis. You don't have to tell them that they support it, and frankly, if they don't say that, don't do that. But put that picture out on social media, say, hey, I was with Representative Goldfinch, or I was with Senator Verdon today, talking about medical cannabis.
Just tag them in it.
Yeah, they love that.
And all your friends.
Yeah, keep doing that, and things like that, and that gets a lot of awareness out there. And then the other thing I will say is be careful when you're talking to legislators. There is a legislator speak in a certain code book that requires sometimes a dictionary to really work out. You're going to talk to legislators several times, and they're going to say a lot of things like, oh, I thank you so much for coming to talk to me. I really, really am sympathetic to your issue. I feel for you and your family. I am going to do everything I can to help you, your family, and the people of my district. Here's how that translates.
See you later.
Thank you for coming. I truly do feel bad for you and your family. And I'm going to do everything I feel is helpful to my district and the majority that keeps me here. in this office. So it's more about what they don't say it's more important than what they do say. You need to ask them whether they support this or not, especially when you're done, and ask them, can you count on their support? Are you going to be supportive? And require them to give you an answer.
Ask
Yes
him to
or
sign
no.
on to the bill, that's always telling. Ask him to sign
That-
on to either bill.
You can ask. Everybody ask. Do it. Ask. Just be prepared to hear, oh.
Go back
When you
to
take,
Well,
take your story.
Not that one. Not that one.
Usually you'll know if they're supportive because they'll either go, well, I'm not really comfortable signing on, but I will vote yes for it. And when you ask
Right.
them to sign on, you'll really get the answer.
But don't
That's
stop
what I
there.
found.
Don't stop the meetings there. Make sure that you continue to see them, whether in town or in Columbia, and make it a point to go by there and go, hey, Senator, get a few minutes with them and go, I know we talked last time. You know my story. You were supportive. You said you'd vote for it. Where are you at today?
It's time to
We're
update my
still, you
Facebook
know,
page.
you got to keep them, because they could say yes today and no tomorrow. That happens all the time. So let's just, you know, keep with them. But that's it. And that's the best advice I can give you right now until further notice. We'll do more of these, absolutely. And as questions come up, my email's in there. Email me. I'll get you my contact information anytime you're in Columbia.
Tomorrow afternoon.
Tomorrow afternoon?
Yeah,
Yeah, me too.
okay. I need to get with you tomorrow afternoon in Columbia.
Okay, I'll be there.
All right.
It'll probably be, well, session comes in Tuesday, so Senate's in at 2, House is in at 12. So nothing's going on until Tuesday, but we'll call. You're going to try to meet with the Senate representative?
I'm gonna get started as soon as I get home.
All right.
I have one more question. Do you know of any group of any of the ones you mentioned that, you know, whether they're just for any type? Is there anybody out there with, you know, I'm sorry, what's his name? Keel. Is there anybody that's tracking where they're going, which city councils are going, where they're putting out this pretty much propaganda, bogus information to sway people? Is there anybody counteracting that?
Oh, counteracting it. Oh, well, that's what we're trying to do, is actually get out and start doing those same kinds of things. As far as if you want to know where they're going and when they're going to be there, you can go to the SLED website. I believe they have a Sheriff's Association and SLED websites. They have calendars of upcoming events and where they're speaking at. There's no, as of right now, Compassion of South Carolina is the one group right now which we're trying to make sure that we're following behind. So basically, it's very hard to go ahead of them because they're law enforcement. So when you want to go to like city council or something, they call the sheriff of the local city, calls city council and goes, hey, we're going to have a meeting we're going to have a town hall meeting. So, and they always give it to them. So we want to come in, but what we want to do is we want to hear, it's almost more effective strategy for us to go behind them so that we can hear what all their ridiculous arguments are, and then we can go, yeah, but here's the data, so not really correct.
The protocol at the local level is a little different than it is at the state house. A lot of times you'll have to sign up a week beforehand.
Right.
To be able to speak at all.
Right.
Keep that in mind.
Yeah.
When you take your story, like you said, make sure it's in writing, but take a picture of your family every time. Hand out this information, a picture of your family, your caregiver. If you're a caregiver and you have the permission, who you're taking care of, you know, take a picture of your family and let that be burned. If it's a loved one that's passed on, let them know that that's a loved one that passed on that could have possibly been helped by this.
I mean, heck, I'd encourage you to attach a picture to your one pager that you leave with them and leave it.
That's what
There
I'm
you go.
saying. Every single time, like you said, go and say, hey, how are you? You know, that's research that politician, find out how many kids they have, and
And that's another thing is to ask them how their kids are and things like that. Know their family and, you know, make it a personal levels, because even if they don't agree with what you're doing, at least if you start to get on a level with them where they could consider you, I don't want to say friend, but friendly, like they consider you a friendly constituent, no matter whether you do or they do or do not agree with you, they'll be more willing to sit down and see you anytime you want to see them. And that's helpful, because the more confrontational you get, the more they go, don't ever let that person near my office. So that's exactly the wrong approach. So I know how angry you were. You might want to.
in my district, I mean, whether if anybody knows Tommy Pope, I mean, if anybody knows Gary Simmerl, I mean, Mitch Mulvaney just, you know, got picked for Trump staff. I mean, so I have a lot of contacts in my area, and I have a lot of politicians as friends. So don't confuse me that just because I, you know.
And every one of those names you just named, we need.
Trust me, I
So
know.
we've got a lot of people supporting right now, but those names, Pope and Simmerl, we need them back.
Trust me, I know.
We need them back, so.
Kimber?
Yeah, you know,
I think Jason may have met with him.
Yeah.
I personally have not met with him. That's from what I understand, yeah.
Can I ask one more question? The medical marijuana is not going to be covered by insurance.
No.
So,
It,
does it muddy the water to go into the fact that if the ACA is repealed, this is going to be even more important for people? Because at least they can get a hold of medical marijuana?
right, so if that actually, if you want to speak to a legislator about how your complete medical insurance is about to be compromised, that's obviously your prerogative. But again, medical cannabis cannot be covered under insurance because it's a Schedule I drug, no ways. So there again is another struggle that you're willing as a patient or caregiver to deal with in order to use medical cannabis over something that's currently being paid for. And if your insurance is repealed, then it would cost you twice or three times as much to get a prescription drug that doesn't help versus something that would for half the
So
cost.
it doesn't muddy the water to bring that in? I
No.
don't turn them off, depending on their stand on the ACA.
Listen, if the ones that are turned off are pretty much turned off hard anyway, so we're trying to just slowly turn it back on, you know.
As we meet with people, is there someplace to register that we've contacted and how it's gone? So that the whole group knows?
So if you go to the website, there's an info tab there. It actually goes directly to Judy's email.
Okay.
So if you just want to give her highlights on there,
She's got it.
it'll go directly to her, and we keep everything. She keeps everything in a database for us. We've got everything listed. We have a whip sheet that we're working on currently. What a whip sheet is, for people that don't know, it's basically a list of every senator, every representative, and whether they're for us or against us, or if they're sitting on the fence. Right now, we have a lot of people on the fence that we're trying to sway our way. We are looking this, so everybody is very aware, we are looking at this as a 2-year process. I think everybody that's been in this fight, not one of them that I've spoke to said it's gonna get done this year.
We're
Not
optimistic,
one.
but
We're
that's not
optimistic
realistic.
on it, but realistically, the work is really, it's, right now, everything's gonna get very hectic as these bills start to move. They come May 12th until January is gonna be when the real work is needing to be done. This is our first real organizational meeting. We have a huge one in Columbia on the 21st, it's all legislators at that one. So what we're gonna be doing over the next year and a half now is really just trying to get as many people as we can, as many voices as we can, starting to be heard. Our sign-up sheet over there is, right now we have about 110 different emails from people that are supportive, that wanna get involved. Our sign-up sheet will start doing weekly newsletters to everybody, so you guys can stay informed on what we're doing, how we're doing it, what help we need, where different events are gonna be taking place, and how you guys can just get involved and start helping in your area, especially Rock Hill. I need
That's what I
somebody
was
in Rock
gonna-
Hill, back.
Yeah,
we
Conway,
need to
I
know
need
today
somebody in
about that.
Conway.
And,
So.
I'd like to see this type stuff.
well, and this is what we're doing across the,
We really need to get into the Rock Hill.
yeah, this is what we're doing across the
Everything in
state.
that state is, our 864 area code is gonna be our toughest area.
So
All
after
right.
May, you really can't contact any of the legislators?
You'll have to contact them at home.
Tomorrow is,
At where they're at in
Yeah.
their areas. And I'll cover one more thing as far as legislative,
Anywhere.
as far as the legislative movement on the bill so far. So the way that the bills work, when a bill is introduced, we have 2 bills dropped, one on each side, the Senate and the House. It doesn't always have to be that way. They're called companion bills. So we dropped one on each side. The way it works is, it is read across the desk and assigned to committee. Then we wait or lobby basically for them to get a hearing in the subcommittee. Once it's heard in the subcommittee, it goes up for vote. If it passes to full committee. Once it's heard in full committee, and subcommittee, by the way, is the only place where you can offer public testimony. So when we have subcommittee hearings, and it doesn't just have to be one, there can be several subcommittee hearings on one particular bill. But anytime you look on the website and we're posting that there's subcommittee hearings coming for a bill, if you want to say anything concerning that bill, you have to be at a subcommittee hearing, because full committee hearings, they don't hear testimony. Now, they might call people up to ask questions and things like that. They don't hear testimony in committee hearings. So once it passes to full committee, the full committee votes on it. When it passes full committee, it's sent to the floor. Then it has to be voted on the floor. If it passes the floor, it crosses over to the other side. So if it came from the Senate, it crosses to the House, and it starts over in the exact same process that it just passed through, subcommittee, committee, floor, and then once both chambers pass it, it goes to the governor to sign into law. So that's, or lieutenant governor, but either way, but that's how it works. So we're in the very infantile stages of this, and we're in a 2-year session, which means if our bill makes it to the Senate floor and crosses over to the House and we run out of time, next year when it picks up, we pick up right where we left off rather than have to start over from the beginning. So that's why we say this is a 2-year fight, and this is our best chance to get it done is in this 2 years. But do understand, we have a lot of work to do in the off season in order to get ready for next legislative session to get this bill passed.
Well, from your mouth to God's ears, Colonel.
So is there any more questions for me?
Do you think if they reschedule that it'll speed this up?
Yeah, the federal government can reschedule this for you.
Well, to answer the question, if they rescheduled it, would it speed it up? If they rescheduled it, there'd be no need to have all these crazy laws making it legal. We would just basically enact it. Because rescheduling it would allow the FDA to do clinical trials along with pharmaceutical and everything else. So this law would almost be moot because they would start in the clinical trials and turn the FDA into the whole thing. So let's just leave it alone. Let's deschedule or just leave it alone. Let us have it states' rights. Well, the one legislation that we're looking at that's hopeful on the federal level is we're not too sure on where Trump stands right now. He's been supportive or said he's supportive, but we have not seen any evidence because things have been a little bit crazy over the last month or so. So what there is, though, is a states' rights bill, which allows basically for all the states to basically just govern themselves on the whole issue. The federal government has agreed that if that bill passes in its letter, the federal government just completely steps out of the whole thing. And it doesn't reschedule or deschedule anything. It just...
It reschedules.
No, the states' rights.
Oh yeah, that's the new one.
The states' rights. I'm not talking about the compassionate care. The states' rights is the most logical one for passing, according to who I've talked to with federal level, that lobbies federal level and stuff. They're looking at the states' rights probably being the most likely to pass in the Trump administration, which would just basically take the federal government, they just get out of the way and just let the states do it however they're going to do it, which would actually help in banking and everything else as far as the industry is concerned. So, yeah. All right. Any other questions for me? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And finally, she needs no introduction, Janelle Ralph.
I'm just going to do like 5 minutes since that was so long in legislation. But I'm just going to talk about the endocannabinoid system a little bit because I know we have some medical people in the back. So the reason why cannabis works on our body the way it does, and whether it's a CBD or any cannabinoid structure at all, CBD or THC, first and foremost, both of cannabinoids in and of itself are the most powerful anti-inflammatories on the planet. And we all know this, all of the researchers that have been privy to being able to do research, whether it's in lab animals or even anecdotal research on humans, as we call it in the United States, because it is a Schedule I drug, and by that you can't actually legally do research on human beings and human trials. What they all have said is by far it's more powerful of an anti-inflammatory than anything they've ever seen before. So there is something to be said. Most of our issues always stem from inflammation, and what we have in our body is known as the endocannabinoid system. About 30 years ago, it was discovered by some very smart people over in Israel, and I call him Dr. M, because I can't say his last name, because I have a hard time pronouncing people's very complicated names. But anyway, so what we have is the endocannabinoid system. It's very much like your central nervous system. It's receptors that are all the way throughout your whole entire body that are put there to actually process cannabinoids. Our body produces what we call endocannabinoids. We have become extremely deficient in these endocannabinoids because we have taken cannabis, whether it is a hemp plant product or a marijuana product, completely out of our diet. Before 1930s, cannabis was the #1 go-to medicine before we started creating synthetic drugs.
We treated everything pretty much with cannabis, and we treated it very successfully. These receptors are built to process what endocannabinoids in our system, what identical is cannabinoids in the cannabis plants. So that is why it's so important that people understand the medicinal side of cannabis and where we've come from before the 1930s, when reefer madness started happening, and they took the whole entire plant and put it on a Schedule I drug, which was Nixon era, and said we cannot do any more research or study on this drug. And some of the research and study that had been done before then was very promising. As a matter of fact, Nixon, once he scheduled it, it was supposed to be a temporary schedule as of Schedule I. He contracted, if I remember my history right, the University of Virginia to do a study on cannabis and cancer, lung cancer. And in hopes that he would find, he thought for sure that smoking cannabis was actually going to create cancer like cigarettes, because they knew then that cigarettes create cancer. They figured cannabis would do the same. What the results out of that study showed was that cannabis actually started shrinking cancer cells. And so from then, the results of that study were hidden and buried, and it still remained on the Schedule I.
Was that the LaGuardia study?
I think, I can't remember the name of it, to be honest. I'm kind of on the fly with the medical, but so that's why it's so important that people understand when you walk into these offices, they need to understand that this is a natural occurring substance our body already creates. We have a system throughout our body that is there to process this. This is not the evil weed, the reefer madness. Not everybody just wants to run out and get high on this. There is actual clinical data, especially before the 1930s and since then in other countries. Israel is probably one of the most predominant places to actually get true clinical human trial studies on all types of different conditions when it comes to cannabis, because they are allowed to do that in Israel. So does anybody have any questions on medical?
I have a statement on medical.
Okay.
Don't go in talking like you're a doctor if you don't know anything about medical.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
because it looks crazy. I mean, it really does. You know.
Just make sure that you understand that. I always tell everybody in this particular issue, no matter how it's been demonized and no matter what has been said about it, we are on the right side of this fight, guys.
Right.
We are. Right. And so, so some of the things that were said today, this is something Compassionate South Carolina, I think, really has to start doing. I noticed what's been done in the last 4 years is it seems like we're always the one on the opposite side. You know, they're coming at us and we're on the defensive. And we're always the one being defensive. We're the ones going, no, that's not right. No, that's not right. Well, it's time we start being on the front end. And it's time for us to start putting our voices out there with facts and get them on the defensive. Because it gets old after a while that they're putting out false facts, and we're always having to remove those false facts. Alternative facts. And so it's time that we have an organization that is coming out with the facts on the front end and then allowing them to start trying to review our facts, because we're on the right side here. So, and I think that that's part of what we're trying to do. We're hoping we're going to be a huge resource for everybody as this moves forward. I know that there's a lot of people in the audience that said they wanted different areas to go to and different things where they can get information. Within the next month, that is the whole goal of the website itself, is to be able to supply you all of that information, keep you updated, and really start doing these educational seminars throughout the state. I'd like to talk to the guy in Rock Hill, and hopefully we can get one done in your area. And Dwayne? Okay. I'd like to talk to you about getting one up and running in your area within the next 2 or 3 weeks and getting people in so we can educate them. Maybe one out in Conway. But we're going to try to reach the whole entire state. The website has a Meet Our Team Leaders group. We've got people in all different areas throughout the state, but we're looking for more. So on the About Us page, if anybody wants to be involved in this, we'll be happy to take your story as to why in a bio and add you to that About Us page to really show that we're all a fighting force together. And we're not just exclusive to patients. I want people to understand that one of the smartest things I've ever heard in this is that it takes a legislator to change his mind. It takes 7 people meeting with him with 7 different perspectives of why he should vote on this. And that's important to understand. These legislators have heard the personal heartstring stories for 4 years. They get it. They understand. Now they want to hear from the experts. Now they want to hear from the business side of it to see what kind of an economical impact this is going to make. Now they want to hear from law enforcement in other states. Has this really caused damage to their state? And it's time we start getting those messages out there as well. So we like to say in our Columbia world, where it seems like I need to move to, I really like being here, is that, you know, what we have to do is educate with a small amount of shame behind it, because that's what's going to push the legislators. If it's all shame, they eventually just shut off. They don't want to hear it anymore. And we're running into a lot of that right now, where we're meeting with these guys. Well, I've heard the personal stories, but, you know, it's just, you know, so we've got to start getting that 7 perspective, 7 different people meeting with those legislators and saying, hey, I'm here for this, I'm here for that, I'm here for this. And then that one really good constituent, or 2 or 3 that has the personal story to go, you know, I need this for my family.
How are we doing on the business people?
I think we've got, I mean,
We need a lot more.
We need more.
Anybody here today?
I mean, we need more. See, we've got a lot of heartstrings,
Hey,
and now we
allow me
need
to
to.
grow my own, I'm in.
Well, unfortunately,
It will
it's
not.
No,
not.
I'm talking about the industry side of it.
But, so we do have some people, I've reached out to that have actually hired lobbyists here that are in the industry, or that wanting to be in the industry, so we do have a few people, but we can always use more. Right now, the current legislation allows for a minimum of 10 grows, get me if I'm wrong on this, a minimum of 20 manufacturing facilities, is that right? And
yeah,
1 dispensary per 10 pharmacies, which is a lot of dispensaries.
That's not
Now,
gonna happen.
I don't know if we'll
They're not
get
gonna
that. I don't know if they'll like that. But at the end of the day, that's a lot of dispensaries. So, you know, if people want to open dispensaries, they need to talk about that. They need to talk about their business history and what business they've been in, and this is what I do, and I'm really looking to open a dispensary, and I'd like to be involved in this.
I would encourage people that are gonna grow,
Yeah.
to talk to them. That would be processors or manufacturers to talk to them. We can't load them up with dispensary people, because that's the ones they're worried about the most.
Medical professionals, if anybody is dealing with a medical professional in this state that says they support cannabis, we need them meeting with their legislators and telling them that they support this. It's very important.
Connect them with this group.
Yeah.
So they can arrange meetings.
It's just so hard because the AMA puts such restrictions on top there, so you know as well as I do, they walk a very thin line.
So here's, the law allows for them to simply, when you go in there, the law allows for them, even with the AMA and everything, with their DEA certifications to write prescriptions and all that. Obviously, they can't write a script for it, they know that. What they can do is write a certification that says, I certify that this person does suffer from this medical condition, and that we have attempted, or other courses of treatment have been attempted and are unsuccessful. There. Now he can go.
All we need is doctors to literally say, I want a better option for my patients.
Which
That's
many
it.
of them are.
And
They're
that's-
very
I mean,
supportive.
that is not gonna take their medical license away. All they have to do is meet with the legislator and simply say, you know what, right now, this is all I have at my resource, opiates. I'd like a better option for my
And
patients,
the
at least
doctors
to
are getting,
recommend them.
their doctors are getting screwed to the wall over the opioid.
Yeah.
Well, it's all they have in their toolbox. They can only prescribe the tools in their
But
toolbox.
they're
So
being questioned about.
absolutely. And the other thing is, there's a wonderful statistic in that packet that says 70-something%, I believe it's 78% or something, 79, 70-something% of doctors are already in agreement for medical cannabis and said they would recommend it for their patients if they had access to it. So that's another thing. So, you know, a lot. So
Yeah, they're not gonna run into issues
70-some%
with
of doctors are saying it.
legislators.
I know you know a doctor that would do it.
They
So-
can legally recommend it. They won't run into an issue with a legislator or their licensing if they met with somebody and said, I would like to be able to recommend this to my patients.
Yeah, they're just.
Or
in support
I would
of it.
like a better
I'm in
option to
support of
recommend
this
to my patients.
option for my patient.
I believe there's some out there to find out, but I'll double down on y'all. If y'all find an oncologist that recommends it, let me know.
I've actually, I've heard of
one
it.
in South Carolina.
Yeah, I've heard a couple.
Really?
Yes.
I've heard a couple.
Really
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. That
Is
already.
anybody, because I don't know if anybody's dealing with cancer in here, Has anybody heard of any new clinical trials in South Carolina? As of last, I haven't heard.
There's no trials that
I
are
didn't think so. See, because that puts me in a position where, you know, I'm going through a bunch of personal stuff, and, you know, here it is, you know, I have a daughter, I have 3 grandchildren.
Well, to
and
you-
here I am put in a position where I might have to leave the
To
state.
you, I would say this, we have a lot of really wonderful herbalists and holistic healers in this state, and especially in this area. One is right here, actually. Her name is Erica. If you are wondering in any respect, she does a lot of treatment with cancer patients on all levels, and is aware of oncologists and people that are in support because that's where she's at. So if you'll just get with her after this, I'm quite sure she could help you and any other further
I've literally
research you're
had
looking for.
one of the head doctors at Waccamaw Hospital call me and talk to me about a client of mine that I've been helping, and it was his head nurse for a long time, and he is so impressed. She's like, I can't wait for this to happen.
It's oncologists, and they're not open-minded, or that's all they do is write script chemo, then I'm not interested in talking to them.
They're not all out for the mighty dollar. There is some that actually do have a heart.
Look, the way the system's set up for
We'll see a
oncologists,
change,
I
for
mean,
sure.
6% remuneration in oncology field, that to me is criminal.
Well, my best friend survived breast cancer, so it's very close to home for me.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's the whole thing, but, you know, thank you, I'm glad to hear that, because I hadn't heard of an oncologist who was basically speaking out.
I can't obviously be very vocal on what I'm doing, but I will say that everyone that I've been working with has had really successful results.
Thank you all very much for coming, and we really appreciate it. And please make sure that you sign that.
Thank you.